My intention today on this call is really to give you what I would call an overview, kind of what to expect for the next 12 months. What I think makes the most sense to be focused on for the next 12 months based on, what's happening in our industry and what I'm seeing across the country. But specifically the next 12 months, the thing that I want you to be thinking and have written down somewhere is take market share. Because over the next 12 months, I think it'll be an amazing opportunity to do precisely that. Okay, there's 120,000 brokerages in the United States. 70% of them have less than 10 agents. Volume went down 36% last year. Okay, went from 6 million transactions to about 3.9 million. We've seen lots of agents. Last number I saw was like 70,000 leave the industry. Last time we had that volume of transactions, 3.9 million, was in 1999-ish. And we had about 1 million agents, just under that, like 990,000. The beginning of 2023, we had 1.6 million. So there's going to be a lot of agents that leave, which is a fantastic, unbelievable opportunity. How do we go about taking market share? Well, the first thing I want you to really consider and think about is focusing on, obviously, sellers. There's many reasons why we want to be focused on sellers. And we're going to start with PC and COI. So some of the stuff I'm sharing with you, it's not really earth-shattering, but it's things we really need to be focused on and paying attention to for various different reasons. Within the PC and COI kind of bucket, we want to have a 42-touch program in place. Now, the reason why this is so critical, guys, is because with technology and because with everything that's going on, having a source of business that is insulated from lower commissions, because your past clients typically don't negotiate with you a bunch. And if they do, it's not that much. And there's also no referral fees attached. Okay. So having that source of business is really a moat around your business. And the thing that these tech companies can do better than us is they do broad data and information better than us. Okay. I don't believe our value proposition is like, letting people know what properties are available for sale. And yet that's what people post all the time, right? They can do that better than us. What they can't do better than us is relationships. So who wants to tell me, drop in the comments what you believe is the purpose of a competitive advantage. What's the purpose of having a competitive advantage? Not to become a commodity. Okay. What else? What's the purpose of having a competitive advantage? Getting market share. Guys, the purpose of having a competitive advantage is to beat somebody over the fucking head with it. A competitive advantage is to be used fully with the purpose and objective of winning, right? So if these companies can do broad information better than us, wouldn't it make sense for us to use the competitive advantage we have, which is relationships at the highest possible level? The answer is emphatically yes. So what does a 42-touch program look like? Well, number one, everybody on this call should be sending once a month a market update via video. Hey guys, it's Edna, your local real estate agent. Just want to give you a quick update, let you know what's going on here in the Texas market. Obviously, if you have any questions or concerns, hit me up. Let's get into the stats, right? I utilize myself and I coach our clients to use BombBomb. It integrates into CRMs. It's very easy to use and everybody should be doing that. Okay, drop in the comments if you're actively doing that. I know Corrado is. Drop in the comments if anybody else is. Nope, I don't see anybody else doing that, but we should all be doing it, okay? The second thing we need to be doing is a once per month, kind of like a Homebot. Homebot is relatively inexpensive. It allows you to be able to send very interesting information that's in an aesthetic that looks, kind of pleasing. It can tell people what they can rent their home for, sell their home for, refinance if there's equity. It's only like $25 a month. But those two touches right there, if we're doing them once a month, that's 24 touches in the course of a year. Okay. Third thing we need to be doing is once a month, a just listed or just sold postcard. to your past client centers of influence, however that number is, 150, 200, 300, people who know, like, and trust you and have either referred business to you or would if you ask them, or they've done deals with you. Now, the purpose of that is there's two worlds that we want to be present in, the physical world and the digital world. And the goal and objective of sending them a just listed, just sold once a month is just pounding into their head, Alma, that I get results. I'm doing deals, I'm doing deals, I'm doing deals. Okay. And that's also relatively inexpensive. I would also propose that everybody should be doing a minimum of 2 events per year. Past client centers of appreciation events. I like to ask people regularly, like, okay, so if our competitive advantage, let's say with these tech companies, is relationships, let's ask ourselves a question. Can I have a meaningful relationship with somebody that I never physically see in the physical world? The answer is no. So we've gotten so, like, if I think I can do high tech without high touch, you're wrong. It must be both. Okay. High tech and high touch. So what do events look like? I'll give you a couple examples. One of my one-on-one clients, her name is Kristen. She's a top producer in the kind of New England, Massachusetts area. And she does this phenomenally. A couple things that we've worked on and kind of put together, brainstormed, and then she executed on. One was when the Taylor Swift movie came out, she rented out the movie theater and invited all of her past clients. She had 90 people almost show up for that. Little kids jumping around, having a blast. Second thing she did is when the Little Mermaid movie came out, she rented out the movie theater and had a Little Mermaid there that the kids could take pictures with. Okay. Third thing she did, where we were on a call and she was like, hey, I really want to come up with something cool for kind of past clients. And I'm at a loss. I said, okay, well, what's happening in your life right now? And the way I think about this is there's two people that you want to connect with, obviously children, but then also the parents. So I'm like, well, what would be a value add that you can add to the parents? She's like, well, there's a half day coming up. What I said, well, you know what a problem with a half day is, right? She's like, what? I'm like, parents don't know what the fuck to do with their kids. So what if you rented out one of those little bounce houses and invited all your past clients? She had like 100+ people show up. That is a value add. And all of these result in her curating long-term relationships with past client centers of influence. She becomes interwoven into the fabric of their life. You see, these large companies, they can't do that. They can't do relationships. So it makes sense for me to be going deep in that area. And I do believe over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there's going to be a lot of disruption. And the strength of your relationships will be a moat around your business. Again, no referral fees, usually insulated from commissions. They may talk to you about it, but they're not going to hack you down sort of thing. In each one of those live events, there's 4 different touches: a text, a phone call, a bomb like email, and a physical invitation in the mail. So if you do 2 of those per year, that's 8 touches plus the actual event. Plus you would have a videographer there that you can blast out and send it to everybody. Now, again, guys, what I'm sharing with you is not new. It's not rocket science. It's really about execution. Everything that I've done in my real estate career up until this point is not new. Selling, listing property in high volume is not new. Role playing and practicing is not new. The media stuff I've done, that's not new. It's been going on for 15, 20 years. Attraction thing we've done, not new. What's unique is the execution. So I'm telling you, you can ignore this to your own peril, but moving forward, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, lots of disruption, having a really solid, meaningful 42 touch program with your past clients under influence and having physical interactions with them on a regular basis will insulate you from some of the changes that we're going to see happening. Is this making sense? Okay. So the next thing that we want to be focused on, kind of 2024 with this theme of taking market share is get a niche. You've heard me say before that the riches are in the niches, right? So I would want for everyone a niche specifically with sellers and specifically around life events, death, divorce, job relocation, moving to assisted living facilities, retirement, because these people have a very high degree of motivation. It's not a, if it works out, great, we'll do it. If not, that's okay. No, they have to. And usually they have equity. Not always, but more often than not. Okay. And they're also blue oceans. So red oceans have lots of sharks and they have lots of blood in the water. Red oceans to me would be like expireds, canceled, for sale by owners, right? The three horsemen that everybody focuses on. There's nothing wrong with those sources. I built my business, calling expired listings, but that was at a time when they were overly abundant, 300 plus a day, right? And I have no problem swimming in red oceans because I'm a great white and I can, get my unfair share. I'd much rather swim in blue oceans though. A blue ocean is where there's not a lot of sharks and there's not that much blood in the water. And these niches fit that criteria because they have higher barriers to entry, right? The higher barrier to entry is Crystal would have to stop doing what she's doing to figure it out. And because she's such a hard driver, it's a pain in the ass. And she's like, I don't want to fucking do that. But I'm telling you, Paul, who's not on this call today, he's with his family. I was pushing him. Okay. He's a one-on-one client, pushing him to do probates, just giving him shit about it. For 3 months, he hemmed and hawed, bitched and moaned, complained. I'm calling them and, I haven't taken a listing yet. You know what happened by the end of 2023? We did his numbers. 75% of his business came from that source. Can you imagine, Crystal, if he didn't pivot? It would have been the worst year of his real estate career, numbers-wise and financially. All because we saw something happening and he made a pivot. And it took about 3 to 4 or 5 months for it to really get going. I'm telling you, though, you want a niche that you can go after on a regular basis, like daily, where you're calling 3, 4, 5 hours a day. I want it to be a source that has a higher barrier to entry and as such is a bluer ocean. For me personally, that was probate. It was 50% of my business when I was, in selling real estate in high volume. It's market resistant, independent of the marketplace. People pass away every year. Super high levels of motivation. 65% of those homes are free and clear. I've told multiple people on this call to do it, and yet very few have actually executed on it. And again, what I want everybody to be clear on, what I'm sharing with you is not earth-shattering. It's not like, wow, new information. It's really about execution. Now more than ever, over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I believe there's going to be massive disruption in our industry, not just from a brokerage perspective, but also from like the way that business is conducted and done. And leaders anticipate and everybody else reacts. I'm going to say that to you again, not because you didn't hear me, but because it's important. Leaders anticipate and everybody else reacts. So if there's a very high degree of probability over the next, 3, 4, 5 years, that agents are going to have to negotiate a portion, if not all their fee on the buy side, what would I be doing right now to prepare myself for that? I would be turning myself into a listing machine. That's what I would be doing. Because it's going to insulate you from a lot of those changes. Is this making sense to you? I would also be curating really rich, meaningful relationships with past client centers of influence, because that'll insulate me from commission compression or insulate me from all these referral fees. There's some agents out there who 75% of their business they pay referral fees on. Either to Zillow or one of these platforms. So having a niche and really focusing on it. Okay. Another example of that would be Heath. He's not on this call, but he's on my, kind of team. And Heath is a full-time cop, still full-time as a police officer. In the calendar year of 2023, he listed over 20 properties and all of them are probates. Part-time. Part-time, guys. Because it's what he focuses on. And he went deep down that well. And there's probably a 6-month learning curve before he really picked it up. In the month of December, he listed 4 properties. Okay. So the riches are in the niches. I'd be developing a niche. The next thing that I would be really thinking about is if you're going to buy leads, make sure that they're seller lead focused. The model of buying leads and paying referral fees on them, either paying for leads or buying leads and paying a 30, 40% referral fee, that's predicated upon a 2 to 3% commission virtually being guaranteed in some way. I know all commissions are negotiable, but that's what it's predicated on. If there's a high degree of probability that that's going to change in the next 3 or 4 years, That model is no longer tenable. It doesn't make sense anymore. Do you follow? Some of the biggest teams and biggest brokerages out there, that's their model. They pay large referral fees or large amounts of money to generate online leads. Most agents are buyer heavy. 60, 70% of their business is on the buy side. That model no longer makes sense if now we're negotiating a fee. Do you follow? So I would be focusing my efforts if I'm going to buy leads on buying listing leads. Now, the best source that I have found for this, which I'll drop a link in the chat, I've told people about it. Some of you have taken advantage of it. Others have not. And Jose has listed, I don't know, 9 or 10 properties from this source. Others have listed and ended up buying properties from this source. Is people who raise their hand and say they want a cash offer. Okay. I'm dropping it right now. Now, why would that be a good source of leads? Well, people who raise their hand and say they want a cash offer with a high degree of probability, they have some sort of life event going on. They're also very motivated. Now, we know, just like these big platforms know, if you look at these big platforms, they've all have a cash offer program. How many of you guys have seen billboards in your marketplace with an agent who says, I'll buy your house guaranteed? Why do you think they do that? Because it generates listing leads. That's why. And they get to determine, Christy, the terms and conditions of whatever, for them to be able to buy your home. And they know only 5% of the time, maybe less, will they actually have to buy it. Or 5% of the time, will somebody accept the offer that you make them? But you know what that does with the other 90%? They're listing leads. You can list them. But it requires you spend a little money. But if you're going to spend money, don't do it on buy-side leads. Do it on seller leads. Does this make sense? And again, we've justified in our mind giving 25, 30, 40% referral fees to the fast experts of the world, the home lights, all these platforms. Do you know why we've done that? Because we're not willing to spend a little money ourselves. You'll really pay, Christy, like $4,000, $5,000 for a lead at a 30% commission. A 30% referral fee on a $15,000 commission. That's insane. You could have bought like 20 leads for that and listed 4 properties. But it's just that we're unwilling to put forth a little bit of capital. So what I'm telling you is if you are going to buy leads, have them be seller lead focused. Does this make sense? Okay. The next thing that I would be focused on is, when it all boils down, guys, this is just a numbers game. Okay. And if you go from 6 million to 3.9 million transactions, and by the way, with a high degree of probability, I think 2024 will be pretty much the same, like not a huge difference. Okay. The last time we had such a big adjustment in transactions, it took 16 years to get back to the previous transaction volume. So I think around 4-ish million, is probably what we can expect. So what we do doesn't change. How much of it we do and how we do it is what changes. So a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Alma could make 10 contacts and hit her numbers and hit her goals. She can't do that anymore because it just makes logical sense that if less people are participating, the amount of people that I'm going to have to be in contact with or be in the presence of is going to increase for me to find the people who have to do something. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, what we typically do is we say, okay, well, what do I need to do? So Crystal, because she's a good hard charger, be like, okay, I'm going to work I'm going to prospect 6 hours a day then. Which is like, great, do that. If you turn yourself into the type of person that can do that, do it. What I'm also aware of is you're limiting your capacity to hit those numbers. And it's all based on your own personal productivity. What I have seen over the last 12 months, because I have a mastermind group with agents that do over $1 million a year in commissions. What they are doing is getting people to help them hit those numbers. So they have telemarketers, typically 2 of them, sometimes 4, that are making calls 8 hours a day to either lists you provide them or lists that they can pull for you. And they are booking those appointments and then doing deals. An example, he's not on this call, is Chris Camacho. Chris is a coaching client of mine, has been for like 7 years. He's also an elite builder with us in Miami. He does like $650,000, $700,000 a year in gross commissioned income. He has telemarketers helping him. It took 90 to 120 days to see results. Now, notice there's a pattern here, guys. Whether it's the niche that you create, typically 90 to 120 days to see results. The problem is that we as agents think very short term. I need a deal today. I need a deal tomorrow. It's very difficult for us to think like in long-term games, but they're totally worth it. So once Chris got through that 90 to 120 day cycle, he's done like 10, 12 deals this year specifically from that source at an average commission of $10,000. It's $120,000 in commissions. But Edwin, I had to spend money to get that. Yeah, you do. You're not going to save your way to $1 million a year in gross commissioned income. Sorry. It's not going to happen. So that's the second thing, which again, logically makes sense and fits within this umbrella of taking market share and also fits within the umbrella of 2, 4, 5 years from now, how the way we do business can potentially change. Everything that I'm prescribing to you will cause you to be a dominant listing agent, which again, insulates you from some of these changes that we see happening. Okay. So having people that can help, right? I said what I wrote down here in my notes preparing for this call, going from 6 million sales in 2022 to 3.9 in 2023, the amount of people that we need to speak to in order to find the sellers that have to sell is simply more. Makes logical sense to have someone stand next to you and to assist you with numbers. Another individual, Kelly Johnson, he's an elite builder. He's in that mastermind group I just mentioned, listing a couple homes a month from that source. Okay. The next thing that I would be doing in 2024 is bold, aggressive guarantees in all media. Okay. A bold, aggressive guarantee sounds like, Brandon, I guarantee you I will sell your house within the listing agreement. If I don't, I'll pay you $3,000 for the inconvenience. An aggressive guarantee is, Ilya, I guarantee you I will have your property rented out in 2 weeks. And if I don't, I'll pay your utilities until I do. These are like aggressive, bold guarantees. Now, what stops people from making them? Drop in the chat what stops people from making bold, aggressive guarantees. Yep, lack of confidence. Finances. He hit it. It's a fear of having to spend money. You realize that, right? But let's examine this logic. You have no problem paying a lead provider $4,000 for a lead, but you don't want to pay a $200 utility bill. Somebody explain to me how that makes sense? Because here's my question. If you take 10 listings, Christy, with that guarantee, and one of them you have to pay to $3,000, let's say 8 of those listings sell at a $10,000 commission, that's $80,000. Would you pay $3,000 to make $80,000?
As many times as I could.
Many times as I fucking could, team. But we have to change our thinking. Now, I've mentioned this to a lot of you guys, and I'm pretty sure nobody's done it. Okay? Now, when I say on all media, like I would be doing posts about the guarantee. If you're a seller and you're interested in selling, DM me the word sell. You know, here's our performance guarantee. We guarantee we'll sell it within a month. And if we don't, we'll give you I'll pay your utilities until we do, or we guarantee we'll sell it within the listing agreement. And if we don't, we'll pay you $3,000 for the inconvenience. And here's why we're so convinced that we can do that. 1, 2, 3. So if you're a seller and you want to have a confidential conversation about your property, DM me the word sell. Or DM me the word guarantee. Right? So in all media, whether it's post, if you do those just listed, just sold postcards, on the back of it, guarantee. Email signature, guarantee. Corrado, we talked about this. Did you do it?
I did not.
And again, these are all geared towards generating what? Listing leads. Do you understand? It's always been important. I was talking to Neil Weichel this morning. I was like, hey, dude, it's always been important to list property, right? I believe in the future, it'll become like the main way of actually making money. Okay. So that's the prescription for 2024. It's what I'm telling, one-on-one coaching clients. It's what I'm sharing with everybody in the organization. Now, the next thing that I would talk to you about in 2024, so that's on the production side. What should I be focused on production side? Technical side. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is technology. Because like it or not, guys, our business is becoming more and more integrated with technology and more tech driven. And if I hear one more time from somebody that they tell me, well, I don't do tech, Erwin. You know what they're, every time they say that to me, do you know what I'm actually hearing? I don't like money, Erwin. I don't want to change, Erwin. And I'm not saying that you guys have to become like, you know, these tech wizards. What I am saying is we have to start paying attention to technology because the people that are coming to eat our lunch, the major corporations that are heavily funded and, you know, basically have infinite amounts of money are tech companies. And what the customer, what you have become accustomed to, Natalie, is when you order a burrito from Chipotle on your phone, you can tell when it's being made, when it's in the car, how far away it is, and when it gets to your fucking house. That's what you become accustomed to. How many of you guys, if you can't get somebody on the phone in like fucking 2 rings, will move on to something else? Anybody besides me? Immediately. How many of you guys, like, you expect things instantaneously because of the world that we live in? I want you guys to really understand me. If you're not using technology, you cannot deliver that level of customer service and that kind of level of speed and efficiency. And if you are not able to do that, you will lose. Period. Okay? So what is some of the technology that in 2024, I believe you should be paying attention to and is like an absolute must? Okay? Without a CRM, you will not be organized and efficient, and you will not be able to compete. That's what I wrote down. Without a CRM that you understand and use on a regular basis, you will not be organized and efficient, and you will not be able to compete. Do you guys know, because now, you know, I interact with agents all the time. Do you know how many times we have to text, email, and phone call just to get people to like show up to something? You know what we realized? Nobody has like a calendar that they actually use. They're not even using Google Calendar. It's not even synced anywhere. It's like a complete hot mess. Let me ask you a question, honestly. Do you expect to make $1 million a year and not be organized? Because if you do, you're fucking hallucinating. I know George wouldn't mind me sharing this because he's on the call. We started working together individually. You know what he told me? He's like, yeah, bro, I'm going to be the first to tell you, dude, not organized. I said, well, what's going on? He's like, all my numbers are in my phone. And I was like, now, to his credit, he's very coachable. He did the hard work to get it now all in a CRM, and he's starting to get organized. But I'm like, dude, you can't be serious and not be organized. I'm sorry. You can't be serious and not be efficient. And this is not really about your own personal efficiency. I mean, that's part of it, so you could be more productive. The main thing is competition. And if people are expecting, Crystal, if the level of speed that you expect as a consumer, if that's their expectation, how can I possibly come even close to providing that level of effectiveness and efficiency if I'm not utilizing technology to help me? You can't. Okay. So having a CRM that you use and understand. Now, when I say use, I don't just mean use it for leads, because as salespeople, that's immediately what we think. We go automations, see, you know, like automated text messages, blah, blah, because we're thinking like sales, right? What I would propose is that a good CRM is a platform that you can build your business on top of, where on the back end, when stuff changes status from like a potential seller to an actual seller, an automatic task list pops up and your staff can go through and bang out the task list. Or when a property gets listed, Christy, an automatic, and it turns into like, or goes under contract where it goes to pending status from like an active listing to pending, a task list pops up automatically and your transaction coordinator can go down the list. Okay. Without that, guys, I need you to understand something. you are going to be running around like a chicken without your head off for the rest of your fucking life as an agent. Ta-da! But we need to stop being like emotionally immature and saying these things like, oh, well, you know, it's just hard for me. It's so difficult. Like, it's just bullshit. Stop telling yourself that story. Everybody on this call has overcome some like very difficult shit in their life. I know it. You mean to tell me like you're going to shrink away from something like this? Like, what? Come on, man. It's not like mature from a business perspective. So, but I'm telling you, moving forward, right? 2, 3, 4 years, if there's lots of disruption, if you're not organized and very efficient, use a CRM, have it dialed in, not just on the sales side for automations and, you know, have technology that can interact with clients and, you know, landing pages and funnels and all that shit for generating leads, but also helps you to be organized on the back end with processing deals. It's going to become increasingly more difficult for you to compete because that's the expectation of the client, because that's our expectation. Technology has trained us to be very impatient and to expect everything fucking immediately. And if it's not provided immediately, we move on. That's what we do. Okay? Can't tell you how many times like I've been on a site and like it gets laggy for a second. I'm like getting ready to buy something. It's like, fuck it. Go to the next one. Why do we think our clients don't do that, Crystal? They do. So that's the one technology. If you're not dialed in with a CRM, have it be one of your rocks in 2024. Okay. It'll also allow you to be list property in high volume, which again is in this theme of taking market share. Okay. Second piece of technology that you need to be paying attention to is like AI. Now I know a lot of people are saying, you know, all these things about AI. What I've seen so far, right? Because I've been on demos where I'm watching ChatGPT have conversations with potential clients and then book the appointment. Go into your calendar, say, oh, like, you know, Edna's available on Thursday at 5 or Friday at 3. Now, in order for that to fucking work, you have to be actually using a calendar. Because it's not going to fucking call you and be like, Crystal, are you available today? Okay, so you have to have a working calendar, but it will literally, I've watched it. It'll be like, oh, it sounds like it makes sense for you to have a conversation, Brandon, with our team leader, you know, Alma. Would that work for you? It's like, yeah, great. I'm looking here at Alma's calendar. It goes into your calendar. She has an opening on Tuesday at 3 or Friday at 5. Which would work better for you? They're like, Friday at 5. Excellent. They book it in your calendar, send them an invitation, be like, you're all set. She's excited to talk to you on Friday. That's fucking amazing. Okay. So do I feel like it's going to replace us? No, I feel like it will aid us in our efforts. Because remember we were saying like, in order for me to, what I have to do as an agent doesn't change, but how much of it I have to do changes and how I do it changes. Well, if I need more numbers in order to find the people, would it make sense for me to have something that can assist me in follow-up? How many of you guys have gone back and called through leads and like, you know, 4 or 5 of them did something, bought without you, sold without you? How much does that fucking hurt? It's painful, bro, and you have nobody else to blame but yourself. But imagine if you have this tool that's let loose and having conversations with all of these leads that maybe you called 4 times and never called again. That's a lot. That's logical. Okay, it just makes sense. So I wrote down here, there are some amazing tools with ChatGPT that can assist you in lead follow-up and systematizing that. I did a demo where I watched artificial intelligence have a full-length conversation with a client, book an appointment in the agent's calendar. Now, we have somebody in our organization. His name is Jason Walters. He has a computer science degree. He also happens to have been an agent for 20 years. So he understands both worlds very well. And he has built out something through a program that he calls Systematic that allows, amongst other things, I know Crystal's been utilizing it, but allows that ChatGPT, you can build out one specifically for expired, specifically for probate, specifically for like different conversations. It's a language-based learning model. So meaning it gets better as it has more conversations, and it does some pretty amazing stuff. So I'll drop in the chat if you want to have a conversation with him on how that works. I think it's worth, yeah, it is sick. It's worth at least a demo. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like at least just to see it. Because when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's pretty unbelievable. So that's the second piece of technology that I think we should be learning about. So a question that I asked myself, and I posed this to the Freedom Builders, right? That mastermind group with agents that do over 100,000 GCI. I said, hey, what do you wish? Ask yourself this question, okay? 5 years from now, what do I wish I learned about today? If you were to go forward 5 years from now, what do you wish your future self would be like? Damn, George, I wish you would have learned about that. I wish you would have spent some time figuring that shit out. Right? Because that really, specifically with regards to technology, I think is very important. And that's something that I recently did. And that's the next piece of technology that I'm going to share with you that I think is really important for various different reasons. I just dropped the link if you want to have a demo with Jason. Is media. Okay. So if you were to look at my feed 3 years ago, it was pictures. My wife was posting pictures of our kids and what we were doing. That shows you the level of attention that I was paying to it. Not that that stuff's not important, but nobody's really watching that except like your parents and shit. 15 months ago, I realized like, hey, this is a thing. Not only is it a thing, it's an enormous opportunity because we live in a time, guys, of permissionless leverage. Now, most of us don't really understand that because if we did, we'd be spending more time on it. What I mean by permissionless is, Christian, you used to have to get somebody's permission to get on the radio. You used to need somebody's permission to get on TV. I don't need somebody's permission to post a YouTube video, do I? Nope. Do I need anybody's permission to post something on one of these platforms that make distribution free? It's permissionless leverage, guys. And the reason that I know you guys don't understand it, because what we use, and I didn't until recently, we use these for our own personal productivity and entertainment. But we're not actually using them as this huge leverage tool. So let me ask you a question. If with a high degree of probability in the next 3 or 4 years, buyers agents are going to have to negotiate a portion, if not all of their fee, would it be helpful if you were known as somebody who is trustworthy and knows a lot about real estate? Would that be helpful to you if you're having those conversations with people? 100%. Edna's like, yeah, it would be helpful. But what most of you guys are still doing is you're still doing social. I see all of your feeds. Here I am doing this. Here I am working out. Here I am doing this. Yay, look at me, look at me. Here's the food I ate. Here's the vacation I went on. Here's me and my baby sitting by a fucking fireplace. Guys, nobody's watching that except your parents. Nobody. You're still doing the social graph, not the interest graph. You're still doing social. You're not doing media. Okay, when you think media, when I say like, hey, tell me a media company, you'll tell me Disney, you'll tell me Netflix, the news, because the news is like majority is entertainment. But what is that about? Entertainment and information. Does that make sense? So these platforms, guys, for you to be known as an agent, number one, as somebody who's trustworthy and somebody who knows what they're doing, exceptionally helpful over the next 3-4 years with lots of disruption, also insulates you from things happening because people reach out to you. And when they've reached out to you, I'm curious, have they already consumed a lot of your content? And if they've consumed a lot of the content, do they trust me already? Guys, I'm just trying to put you on game, team. Here's what I wrote down. We live in a time of permissionless leverage. Truthfully, I didn't fully understand the magnitude until recently. Attention is currency. When I say the word currency to you, what pops into your head? Money. Attention's money. It's the same thing. They're interchangeable because money and power follows attention and attention follows money and power. It's a loop. As people trust you, they watch. And as they watch more people trust. It's a virtuous loop. Okay. I wrote down with the commission lawsuits in the future that will likely have homebuyers negotiating a portion, if not all, their fee, being known as an agent that is trustworthy, is knowledgeable, will be a distinct competitive advantage that is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. We have to stop telling ourselves like I can like, oh, like I don't have to pay attention to that. Yeah, you do. It's one of the pieces of technology I think you need to pay attention to. So to recap, technology, CRMs, understand how to use them, not just for leads, but also for backend processing. Right? Number two is AI. I dropped in a link. You can have a demo. Check that out. How it works within a CRM. It can aid and systematize lead follow-up. And number three is media platforms. So you could be known as an agent who is trusted and knows what they're doing. Okay. There's a quote from this guy, Novello. He said, if you want to get paid in the future, you need to live in the future. I'm going to say that again. If you want to get paid in the future, you need to live in the future. So I don't have a crystal ball. At the same time, with all this stuff that's happening, we can get a high degree probability. I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out, but with a high degree probability, you know, this way, right? So I can make decisions in accordance with that. And I also believe that in the future, so again, if you want to get paid in the future, you live in the future. So here's what I would suggest. Get really good at something and then create a brand around that thing with your name. Isn't that what I'm doing? I got really good at something and now creating a brand around that thing with my name. Okay. And I can tell you it's a long game. It's not something that happens like immediately. It's not. It took me 12 months, 15 months to really get it going. Right. But in 2023, I went from 2,000 on Instagram to 42,000, didn't buy fucking one follower. Because check this out. You can buy followers, but you can't buy supporters. Organic's harder because it takes longer and most people play short games. But went from 2,000 to 42,000. I got monetized on YouTube, right? And then we've been hitting 500 to 1 million views per month. So what am I doing in 2023? I'm taking my own advice. I'm going to start doing, instead of 2 videos per week, 5 videos per week on YouTube. Posting 3 to 4 times a day on all channels. I've already had people reaching out to me to be on their podcasts. I'm going to be flying around to be on podcasts. Why am I doing that? Because of what I'm telling you. Getting good at something and building a brand around with your name. My goal and objective is to walk in a room of agents and everybody knows who I am. No name tag required. And by doing that, not only does that create opportunities for me, but it also creates opportunities for everybody else. It truly does. Makes it easier for everybody to attract and do different things, right? Okay. So that's the third piece of technology that I would propose, are these platforms. Spending the time to figure it out, spending some resources, time, energy, effort with acquiring some attention. And not, okay, I want to say something about this too, is that I think people are so thirsty for attention that what they do is they copy other people. They're like, oh, this person got views doing this. Like, I'm going to do it so I can get views. I need you to understand that that's a race to the bottom. If you really want to create a brand long-term, the highest form of that is authenticity. Just being yourself. Because nobody can compete with you being you, Edna. Nobody. The problem is the reason why we don't put the real us out there is because we're afraid somebody won't like it. Well, let me in on a fucking secret. Somebody won't like it. I promise you. Somebody will talk shit. Somebody will say you ain't shit. Somebody will do all of this stuff. But a quote that I love from the great philosopher Drake is, how you going to hate from the nosebleeds, bro? You know what I'm saying? Like, if I wouldn't take advice from you, why am I taking criticism from you? So long term, like, I was watching Rick Rubin. He was saying, like, that music guy, I think his first name's Rick, but his last name's Rubin, guy with a crazy beard and fucking crazy hair. And he's like this guru of music for artists. But what he coaches them on is the following. He's like, look, real art is where you make something for yourself. And it's like a diary entry of who you are in that precise moment. And then if somebody else happens to like it, great. Almost everybody does the exact opposite. Anybody besides me ever seen a shitty movie? You know why that movie was shitty? Because they made it trying to figure out what you wanted to see. They didn't make it like, we think this shit is dope, and if you like it, great. You understand? And that's what the approach should be to media. And I believe, in my opinion, that's part of the reason why, the content that I produce resonates, because I don't make it for other people. It's just a reflection of who I am at that moment. I'm also not attached to what people think. I almost said on a call one time, she was like, bro, how do you not care? Like, it was like she asked me, like, I was like levitating off like the planet. Like, how is that fucking possible? How do you even do that? And I was like, again, like, I'm just aware of the brevity of life. Because I want you guys to understand something. Like, I told her this story. I was like, listen, sometime hopefully in the distant future, but like, if I'm not on planet Earth anymore, people will reach out to Carla. They'll give their condolences. They'll say they can come, they can't come, whatever. Then people will come in. There'll be a service. Some people won't like the food. Some people will bitch about the time. People will compete about like who knew me better. I don't fucking know. Right? And then they'll all go home and go back to their life. And then 6 months later, Carla will be watching something on whatever streaming shit or whatever technology is available, and she'll laugh again for the first time. And her life will go on. If you realized how quickly you'll be forgotten on the planet, like, I need you to understand something. 2 generations from now, nobody will fucking know who you are. How many of you guys know who your great-great-grandpa was? Nobody! Not even a fucking clue. You probably don't even know their name. You understand what I'm saying to you? So when you put it into that context, it's like, I was like, Alma, why would you give 2 fucks what any of these people think? Nobody's going to remember you anyway. You think that one post that you do, anybody's actually going to watch it? So that's kind of the mindset behind that, but it's exceptionally powerful. I had 4 people reach out to me this month, want to talk to me about either coaching or EXP, and I never spoke to them before in my life. And the first thing every one of them said, I've been watching your videos on YouTube. And it works for any product or service. It just does. Okay. Now, the last thing, and then I'll open it up for some quick questions, comments, concerns. The last thing for 2024 is I wrote down agent attraction or just disruption. So I was listening to a podcast recently. This guy, Michael Del Preti, he has no skin in the game. He's not an agent. He's not a broker, but he's an analyst, and he does a really good job of like consolidating data and presenting it in a way that's easy to understand. But he was interviewing this guy from Real Trends, and Real Trends is, I'm sure you've heard of it, but they consult with brokerages. They also do mergers and acquisitions. They facilitate them. So they have lots of data, right, on brokerages. And he was giving some stats, which I thought were really interesting. So there's 120 brokers in the United States, 120,000 brokers in the United States. 70% of them, Natalie, have less than 10 agents. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. That means they're all in production because they can't make money that way. And if volume went down 36%, let's think about second level consequences to that. The vast majority are going to look around and be like, yo, the operational and financial drag to try to run this brokerage when it doesn't make me any money is getting too much to deal with. So they're either going to merge with others, stop doing it, or they're going to look for a new home. Make sense, Ashley? That's just logical. That's not like anything other than just logic, right? Now, the next stat that I thought was super interesting is they've been looking at retained company dollar over the last 50 years. So what that means is for every dollar that comes into a brokerage firm, how much is retained by the owner that they keep after expenses and stuff, right? 50 years ago, it was 50% of every dollar. Do you know what it is today? On average, 13%. That is a massive compression of net. He asked them, George, he asked the guy, who's dealing with all these brokers all the time from Real Trends. He's like, well, you're talking to them. What are they doing to deal with that? He said, getting rid of expenses, staff and space, shrinking space and getting rid of expenses. You know what I immediately thought in my mind? EXP has already done that. There's something called a Schelling point in game theory. And what a Schelling point is let's say you have two competitors, but they can't speak to one another ever. There's no communication between them. And let's say in business, one person's charging $11 for a widget or a service, another person's charging $13. Do not be surprised if 5 years from now, they're both charging $12 without ever speaking to each other. They just converge naturally. So what I deduce from this information is that what we are converging on is a flat rate model in brokerage. Flat rate could be like a United that charges per transaction, or like a KW or an EXP that charges like only a certain amount, right? And that's it. We're all converging on a flat rate model. And from a brokerage perspective, cloud-based, because it gets rid of staff and space. Purely from economics. Does that make sense? So I believe that this is an enormous opportunity over the next 2 to 4 years, and definitely the next 12 months, because there will be lots of consolidation. Those smaller, brokers that have less than 10 agents looking for a place to go, right? Or those agents, when they shut it down, looking for a place to go. Okay. Lots of consolidation in the brokerage business and lots of agents looking for a new home. If you are with a platform that gives you the opportunity of agent attraction, I would make a plan for the next 12 months of adding 10 agents in the next 12 months. Call me up in 5 years and thank me later. Okay? Because I believe it truly is like the opportunity of a lifetime. I think in 10 years, 50% of all brokerages will be with cloud-based, like 50% of all agents will be with cloud-based brokerages, just from economics. Not because I'm with one, not pounding on my chest, just like observationally, looking at data and looking at numbers. And that compression of net has to go somewhere. Okay. So that's what I would propose to suggest we be paying attention to in 2024. My goal and objective here is really to equip you with what you need to know. Remember, this is about execution. It's not just about, intellectualizing and having a conversation about. My goal and objective here is for you to take what we've talked about today and start to implement. And you're not going to do it all at once. You might pick 3 of the things we talked about, whether it's with past clients or technology or whatever, and implement them in the first quarter. And then go back and take 3 more and implement them in the second quarter, and so on and so forth. And keep coming to these calls so we can hold you accountable to make it happen. We have a few minutes. Christian, what you got your hand raised. How can I help you, bro? What question you have?
Yes. First of all, I want to say thank you. The past, I would say 3 months, I have consistently been prospecting 5 days a week. Before then, it was very, in and out, in and out. In order to do that, though, and this is why I bring it up, because we're in the subject, one of my main distractions was social media. And I fully understand and I see the power in social media. So I just wanted to know, what are some tips to not be a consumer, but a producer of content, not to get, get stuck in the algorithm. Because
here's what I think is true. I think that a lot of individuals, I'm not suggesting it's true for you, but just in general, and I can also speak from my own direct experience. A lot of people use social the same way we used to use TV, as a mechanism, a soothing mechanism for zoning out. Look, you see how many fucking heads are shaking? It's just a soothing mechanism for zoning out. Right? So if there's anxiousness or tension, oftentimes we could just and it soothes it a little bit. Now, the challenge is, particularly on these social platforms, I think that they perpetuate our natural desire to compare. And what happens is this constant comparison between myself and other people. And we lose track of the fact that the majority of what people post is their highlight reel. They don't post when me and them are on the call and they're fucking crying. They don't do that. Right? So I have to keep that in mind. So one would be like recognizing like, hey, has this become like a soft addiction where I needed to like feel comfortable? Okay, that's the first part. The second part is like my kind of philosophy is I consume to create. So I consume to create. So prior to this call, I'll give you an example, and it's something that I'm going to share with you guys. I watched this one guy say something, and I was like, oh shit, that's dope. I want to share that with other people. He's like, why do dogs eat their own throw up? If you have a dog, you've watched your dog do that, right? It's like, what the fuck are you doing? That's ridiculous, right? But he was like, humans do the same thing. They go back to the same habits that cause very poor outcomes. It's the same as them eating their own throw up all the time. And I was like, oh shit, that's dope. But do you see how that's like consuming to create? Does that make sense? And I'd also like view it as a mechanism for learning, not entertainment, because that's really where the shift is for me too. So I'll flip through like TikTok and stuff, but like I learn shit. I've gotten books from TikTok. I've gotten like cool ideas from TikTok. Like or when I watch podcasts, it's more to like educate myself. It's not to like entertain. Does that make sense? So those two together, one is like this internal psychological thing because these platforms and the creators of them, their mechanism is to keep you, like their goal and objective is to keep you on there as much as possible. It's to make them addictive. And they don't come with like a caution or like a fucking manual on how often you should, and they're addicting in nature. And because they're so addicting in nature, like we get these hits of dopamine, these little pops of dopamine, and it's faulty dopamine because in the past you used to have to earn dopamine. I have to like go fucking work out or like, you know, run around or like accomplish something or, you know, whatever. And I would earn the dopamine, but now we get like incessant dopamine without having to do anything. And I don't think that's like healthy long term. So that's a really good question. And I know a lot of people will get something from that. So I appreciate you asking. We have a few more minutes. Any other questions, comments, concerns, observations, hallucinations?
The niches are in the riches, or the riches are in the niches.
There you go. Both ways work, brother. 100% accurate. The challenge is they take time to build. And we have a tendency to be short-term thinkers. And I understand why. It's not just agents, it's humans. Because our brains, you know, this prefrontal cortex thing is like relatively new in terms of like history. So the primitive part of our brain is wired to constantly be scanning the landscape for threats. Because like 1,000 years ago, you would live to be like 35 years old and you had to constantly scan the landscape for like threats of like danger, a tribe coming to get you, fucking animals trying to eat you, weather, where's the food at? But we don't live in that time anymore, right? So, but it makes sense that if that's what my brain's wired for, that's immediate right now. Good judgment is really about what's best for the long term. That's what good judgment is really about. And when you really look at it, like I think a lot of what ails society, not all, but a lot, is behavioral. And it's usually short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. Like what feels good now, what tastes good now, what I want to do right now, I want to spend right now, I want to consume right now. It's not long-term. So I want to play long games because most people aren't willing to play them. So this is a long game. Like cultivating a niche is a long game. It might take you 5 months to figure it out. But in the long run, I shared that example with Paul. Dude, 75% of that cat's business this year came from a niche. Can you imagine I told him, like, can you imagine on a call, like, can you imagine for a second if you didn't do that? Bro, because he's like, well, you know, I did a little bit less than I did last year. I'm like, just fucking, can you imagine for a second if you didn't make that pivot? It's a good observation. Anybody else? Something you took away from today?
In my case, I'm thinking one of the things that you mentioned was building your platforms, your social media, and how you're sharing that you're going to be traveling. In my mind, I'm thinking how to get there, right? And I mean, I just get like, you know, time management, right? Because you want to prospect, you want to do this, you want to do that. And then creating content takes time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking ways how
Yeah, you want to figure out ways that you can not necessarily create, but document. So if you notice, the majority of content that I do is documented. I'm just filming what I'm already doing.
Okay.
It's not like I'm like, what am I going to do today? Like, it's just like turn the camera on. So to give an example, like what we just did today, I'm going to send to the editors and they're going to put it on YouTube. I'm just documenting what I'm already doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's part of it, is documentation. The second part is, I think people would look at the amount of content that I'm producing and think that it takes me like all my time. And it doesn't. It maybe takes like 8 hours a month. And the reason is because like there's a content like kind of a way about getting it. So let's say if I do a talk once a month, that one talk can turn into 20 short form pieces of content. If I do one webinar, that one webinar can turn into 20 more pieces of short form content. If I do one podcast, that one podcast can turn into 20 pieces of short form content. If me and Jose, which we're going to start to do on Fridays, are going to hop on and just like live stream and have a conversation, the live stream turns into a 1 hour long form, and then the piece can get chopped up and put into shorter stuff. Do you see what I'm saying? And for an agent, let's say for someone who's primarily focused on, finding buyers and sellers, I would propose there's short, medium, long. Short form content could be educational, but it also has to be entertaining. Not just like, hey guys, here are the 4 things to look at a home inspection. Like, that's fucking boring. Like, nobody's going to watch that. Okay. Except like your parents. So you have to, Christy's like, oh man. So you have to be like entertaining. It has to be valuable information, but entertaining. A good person to watch, because he's focused almost all of his content on that until, recently, is Jose. Jose does a really good job of valuable information that's also entertaining. Right? And those are short 60-second things. And the 60-second thing is hook, value, CTA. Hook, value, CTA. Hook being like, what's going to grab your attention? So I was talking to this guy who's getting ready to partner with us. And he's like, yeah, dude, I want to get good at like the media thing. I'm like, great. He's like, well, I find myself pontificating. I just like turn the camera on and I talk for 4 minutes. I'm like, well, first of all, it's boring as fuck. And people are going to swipe off in like 10 seconds. You have to grab their attention. So he was like, well, I'm like, what video did you do? He's like, well, how buyers buyers, sometimes they get like emotional. It's hard for them to make decisions and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you lost me already, bro. Like, give me a hook that's going to grab people's attention. You ever wonder why your buyer doesn't make a decision? People are like, what? Yeah, I do wonder that sometimes. Right? Here's the 3 reasons I find that buyers don't make decisions. Number 1, we think that we're thinking beings that feel when we're really feeling beings that think. Number 2, they're deathly afraid to make a mistake. And number 3, they take too much outside information from other people, and that influences their decision. If you want to learn more, be sure to follow me. There's a CTA at the end, which is the call to action. So hook, value, CTA. Hook, value, CTA. Like, that's how you do it. Medium form content would be property tours, but with you in it. Do you know how many of you motherfuckers do property tours and you're not in it? Because you're insecure. Oh, I don't like the way my hair looks and fucking me. I had somebody recently say to me like, oh, well, I don't want like to get attention. I'm like, great, you're going to be broke the rest of your life. Like, you're missing this enormous opportunity, and it's all because of insecurity. So like property tours, but with you in it. The second would be like videos about like the community. So let's say you do a lot of business in like the hills or whatever the name is. You could do a 5-minute, 10-minute YouTube video on the hills. It goes to YouTube, but then you also chop it up and it goes to shorts. Okay. And then the long form content. Oh, and then medium form too could be like local business highlights. You could go to local businesses and be like, hey, because you want to be known as the hyper local expert that nobody knows fucking, Rancho Cucamonga more than Crystal. Nobody. But how do you let everybody know that? Just because you tell them, I'm the expert? No, you have to like fucking show them that you know what you're doing and that you know everybody, right? And you know all the things, right? Now, long form, I would propose is a podcast. It's so easy to do, guys. For a whole year, I hemmed and hawed Edna about doing a podcast. A whole fucking year. You know what story I told myself? Like, well, you need all this equipment, super fancy, blah, blah, blah. And then finally I got to a place I'm like, this is horseshit. I'm tired of this fucking shit. I got just a streaming camera, and a Zoom account, and I did a podcast. Now, if you look at the first ones, they're not great. You know, the quality is like, okay. The content's really good. What we're talking about is good, but like production wise, it's not great. But who cares? I started. Right? And in that long form, you could interview builders, you could interview home inspectors, you can interview like all the people that are associated with real estate. And then you know what you do, Edna, because now you're using a CRM because it was one of the things on your list for 2024. You could do a batch email and blast it out to all your past client centers of influence every time you do one of those, which is value add. Oh, George, bells are ringing.
Hey, Aaron.
And then what you can also do, hold on. Then what you can also do is you can chop that long form up and now you have short form. So do you see? You just need a plan about the types of content that you want to create. And then it becomes easier to do it. Yeah. Make sense? Good.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
My pleasure. What's up, Crowder?
I was just going to say also, when you're putting out content too, to recycle that to not just Instagram, not just YouTube, not just your Google business page, but that one video could go out to like 5 or 6 different channels, which has been kind of helpful for me too.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So, and what I would propose is that you want to be on all those channels. So some people, I'll pick on Natalie if she's still here. She's still here? Yep. So I had a call with Natalie, or I reached out to her maybe like 3 months ago, and I was like, hey girl. She's like, what? I'm like, you are missing out on opportunity. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're like myopically focused on Instagram. Look, she's already starting to get uncomfortable. She's like, oh, fuck, he's going to talk about this right now. And I'm like, dude, you need to be on other platforms, and you need to be on, specifically on YouTube, because it's like the king daddy of platforms for multiple different reasons. One, it's the only one that does long form and short form. Two, it has built-in search. Now I know that Instagram works for her, but she needs to be like multidimensional. So what I would propose is short form content is Reels on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. Okay. You can, any short form piece, you could post on all those platforms. Long form content is YouTube. And what I've learned is that like people reaching out to me, almost invariably, they start watching me on short form, but they get to the long form. And then they're like, yeah, I've been watching your YouTube videos. Because people have done studies, George, where if somebody consumes 15 hours of content, there's a very high degree of probability that they'll probably engage with you in some way or do business. It's very difficult to get to 15 hours in 60-second shorts. Not so difficult with hour-long podcasts. Make sense?
Aaron,
Good.
I have a question now since you picked on me.
Yeah, I'll allow it because I picked on you.
So I too have been saying for the last year that I'm going to start a podcast, and I haven't pulled the trigger.
Yeah, what's stopping you? What's really stopping you? No bullshit.
So number one, I feel like the same thing. Like I don't have the, the instruments. I don't have the technology. I don't have the this. I don't have the that. And then it's like every time I say I'm going to do it, I feel like I need so much more than what I feel than maybe what I really need. And I don't know. I just need to do it, and I just haven't done it.
Yeah. So there's usually something underneath that, like underneath, like, it's something new, like whatever.
I'm also afraid that I'm not going to have, like, for example, let's say I ask you to be on my podcast. Like, I feel like I'm not going to have the right questions or the right, I don't know. I feel like I'm not a person that can talk the whole time, like have enough things to talk about.
I've seen you in fucking private settings.
Mm.
You don't not stop talking.
Thanks.
Like you're a very outgoing, like gregarious person. It's just you're getting in your head about how you're being seen. That's what's happening. And it causes you to get scrambled for a second. Because you're overly concerned with how you're being perceived, or if I ask the right question, or am I going to look stupid or dumb, or blah, 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 blah. But when you're in a setting and that's not the case, because I've been out with you.
Right.
You don't do that at all. You're like, hey, what's up, bro? You just blah, 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 like shooting a shit, like whatever. Just have it because you're not worried about how you're being seen.
Right.
Right. So the way that I do those interviews is more like I have a general idea of what I want to talk to them about, like maybe 3 or 4 questions, but then it's like an open conversation. They'll say something to me like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me a little more about that. Or like stuff will pop up as we're talking. So I would approach it like just like a conversation, but I would definitely start. Because you have to ask yourself a question, okay? 5 years from now, will your future self punch you in the face because you didn't do it? Yes.
Yeah. But my person right now wants to punch the person a year ago for not starting.
Right. So it's just doing it. And again, it's at first, if you go back to my first video, like they're not production quality, they're bad. The content's good.
Right.
But the production quality is like terrible. Like the thumbnails are terrible. Like the video quality is terrible. I just got this new camera that makes me look all super crispy. Like that's new.
Right.
So like, and that's, 3 years into having 2.5 years into having a podcast. So it doesn't have to look perfect. It's just that you start.
Okay.
And for you, particularly with the attention you have in short form, you should also be banging on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, like, because you should be rounding out that ecosystem.
Well, now what I've been doing is I've been posting the same, whatever I post on Instagram, I just post across the board on everything.
Yeah, which I think is intelligent. But then we have to fill in the long form.
Right. That's what I'm missing.
Yeah. Good. So I'm more than happy to be your first guest, but like, do it.
Okay.
Mario.
I had a question, Aaron.
Yeah.
I don't have a website, so I was going to spend some money on that. But now that you're saying podcast, I actually have a space where I can do a podcast or just spend money on, I guess, media setup. What do you think's a better use of money?
Yeah, I think a website is just like an online brochure. I wouldn't be spending a lot of resources on that. I would spend the minimum amount of resources. And instead, I would put resources in media. So I recently was making, so what CEOs do is they really allocate resources, financial resources and human resources. So I was thinking, I was going to make a decision on where to put resources. And I thought to myself, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll put it in like a space, where people can come and we can do events, like all that other stuff. And the space was not inexpensive, but that was fine. But then the more I thought about it and I marinated on, I'm like, well, what will have the biggest ROI? And I came to the conclusion that the space would not have the ROI that more media would. So instead I did 5 videos a week on YouTube. Carla's going to start posting 2 videos per month on YouTube and 1 short per week. And one short per day, because she attracts a whole different segment of the population than I do. That would have a bigger impact on the bottom line and be a better source of resources than a space. This is the exact same thing where media will have a bigger impact on bigger impact than having a website.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Makes
I would
sense.
have a website, but just like, it doesn't have to be like super fancy or like expensive.
Makes sense. Okay. I appreciate it. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, team. Well, listen, I appreciate you guys. I hope this has been an enjoyable use of your non-refundable precious breaths. Drop in the comments if this was helpful to you. Drop in the comments if you're excited about 2024. Drop in the comments if you're coming to the gala. That shit's going to be fire.
Real quick, Aaron, if you don't mind, because I know Natalie and Mario were talking about starting podcasts and stuff. If anyone on this call ever has any questions about like what camera I should get, camera equipment, connecting to your computer and stuff like that, feel free to reach out to me. Find me in the WhatsApp, anything like that. I'm here to help anyone.
Yeah, Ricky's our resident tech guru. He's the man. He's a good dude. So I appreciate you guys. Let's go be great. Hey, again, 2024 is going to be the opportunity to take market share. And I don't know about y'all. I'm ready to take it. Let's go. There's actually a lead source, Jose, that is completely independent of market conditions. Doesn't matter if the marketplace is going up, down, sideways.